let's continue with the judge asking if a president can order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a rival. Here, Trump's lawyer's response.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
What if he weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is? My
answer is qualified yes.
I mean, we all, at that point, we all in the room kind of sat back for a second because, first of all, to make a concession of any kind, it's major. But when you hear that, trying to go through the hypotheticals, trying to follow that thread of common sense and logic, what struck you about that moment where he essentially has a qualified yes that a president could actually order an assassination, and if he's not impeached or convicted, immune?
I think he's really making the argument for Jack Smith. This is exactly what Jack Smith has been warning about, that are we a country of presidents or a country of kings? We had violence on January 6th, but he's saying the president can take it a lot further. The president himself can direct that violence openly using official government resources, and that's fine. And I think what it does, it establishes how dangerous this presidential immunity argument truly is. And to your point, Ellie, we could have had the kind of the original argument that spoke about the so-called outer perimeter, which saying, hey, I was just doing my job, and to protect me and to protect the institution, I should be given some coverage. The same way presidents get civil immunity. What they've done is say, let's go further. That the president, even when he effectively is not upholding and effectively executing the laws, in that scenario, he's still covered. When he's breaking the law, he's still covered.
There's something really strange about the way that Republicans have usually responded to stuff like this. Because on the one hand, Donald Trump is literally making the argument that maybe as president, he could murder people. At least his lawyers are making that argument. While simultaneously, the rest of the conservatives in the Republican Party have to be like, oh, no, you don't get it. He's just joking. And then Trump is consistently like, no, I'm not joking. It's very odd. It's not dissimilar to the way that Israeli politicians in Hebrew will be like, I'm doing genocide. I love doing genocide. Palestinians are dogs who deserve genocide. And then the defenders of Israel in the Western world have to turn around and be like, you guys, what do you mean genocide? Come on, they're not being serious. I don't take this as the international, court of justice. I mean, that would be ridiculous. I mean, if you do, come on, it's not really. It's like putting their defenders in a weird position over and over again. Yeah, kind of like how Kanye was on Alex Jones, where Kanye was openly saying insanely anti-Semitic things. And then Alex Jones was trying to stop him to be like, oh, come on, you just mean rich people, right? You mean come on. You mean the rulers of society? He's like, no, dog, I'm talking Jews. Come on, that's not how we, listen up, Kanye. We're not supposed to be saying stuff like that.
Well, first of all, just think about this. What that would suggest, as long as I can hide my behavior long enough to be in office and avoid impeachment, I can get away with anything I want. All I have to do is not have transparency or eyes into what I'm doing, because the only way to have an impeachment is if, one, I know about your behavior, right? If the House is going to bring the impeachment articles, if then we'll actually have the actual moment to conduct an actual trial. So all I got to do, if I'm the president of the United States, is just bide my time. That's part of that argument. But there was a moment here, too, when the council, I think
it's pretty funny that they're talking about this as a hypothetical, but that's kind of exactly what Donald Trump did do. Because Republicans every step of the way were like, impeachment, this is a political argument. Actually, why don't we leave it up to the courts, as a matter of fact? And then now that they're like, okay, well, we impeached you. We didn't convict you. You said you would leave it up to the courts. They're acting brand new. They're like, well, what do you mean it like that? Don't bring it up to the courts. The courts are fake and gay. And also, the courts famously, notoriously hate Republicans, red-blooded patriots who were hot and shouldn't be punished in the courts. We were just kidding about the court thing. Actually, we hate the rule of law. It's so funny. The Republicans collectively said, in an identical parallel that can be seen on January 6th that I covered briefly, on January 6th, they went from, oh my God, I can't believe how, unruly this is. We have to do the rule of law thing. Stop rioting, please. You're not Antifa. To actually, these are patriots that were harmed and are being held hostage by the American government 3 years later. Same energy between, let's just, this impeachment thing is a sham. It's a mockery. Let's actually have the court settle Trump's insurrection, like Trump's dealings. Let's have the criminal justice system deal with it. And then when the criminal justice system is dealing with it, they're like, absolutely not. That's unacceptable. How dare you? How dare you do such a thing to our beautiful boy? Okay. I guess you just don't want, a Republican to ever be prosecuted, which is ding, ding, ding. Exactly. That's the goal.
To authorize the prosecution of a president for his official acts would open a Pandora's box from which this nation may never recover. Could George W. Bush be prosecuted for obstruction of an official proceeding for allegedly giving false information?
Oh my God, I can only get so hard. It's like inappropriate if I keep listening to this. I might nut on camera. Oh my God. Oh God, dude, don't do it. Don't threaten me with a good time, King.
To Congress to induce the nation to go to war in Iraq under false pretenses? Could President Obama be potentially charged with murder for allegedly authorizing drone strikes targeting U.S. citizens located abroad?
That's the political question that Trump was raising, and we played that clip earlier about the threat, so to speak, and what would happen next. That's the heart of the matter. If you open this sort of Pandora's box politically, Trump will suggest, well, then everyone is fair game.
But the argument that James Pierce made as a rebuttal to that was, if you do go by what the prosecution or what the defendants or the Trump's attorneys are saying, that then it would open up presidents to being able to commit a whole host of criminal acts and to get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. Both sides have this slippery slope argument that they're putting forward. But I think an important argument from the Jack Smith side was speaking about history here. There's a whole lot of talk.
What do you mean slippery slope? No, the Republican argument here, the Trump attorney argument, is a slippery slope argument. The other argument is not a slippery slope argument. It's an application of the law. And also, one is talking about stopping an active prosecution from criminal prosecution from continuing. The other is fantasizing about potential crimes that previous presidents could be convicted of now. On that, if you consider that to be a slippery slope, then yes, every application of the law is technically, being thought about on the basis of like who it applies to, and that's always going to be a slippery slope. I think it's ridiculous to be like, oh, both sides' arguments are, should presidents be above the law? And one is saying like, well, what about all the other stuff that presidents have done at the behest of like the American government and like American foreign policy and the continuation of like America's interests globally? Should they be prosecuted for that? And the other side is saying, if we don't prosecute presidents for doing stuff that's not at the behest of like American foreign policy, but only on their own, for their own personal gain, like what Trump did, and we don't prosecute him for that, then presidents can do whatever they want. And the real standard not being talked about here is whether or not something is being advanced for American global interest. You can do whatever you want as long as you are doing it under the umbrella of advancing America's foreign policy interests or America's interests in general. But the moment that you flip that script over to selfishly trying to preserve your own power, all of a sudden, you can't make that argument. That's basically it. If there was oil, for example, that Donald Trump could have, found by somehow ensuring the continuation of his presidency, then it would be fine. But there is no oil to be found in the continuation of a second Trump presidency.
For our system to work effectively, you have to have prosecutors that are acting with a sense of justice, that are using discretion appropriately, and that is true in every scenario, for everyday Americans and for former presidents. So that faith in our system, we have to have that for our system to make sense, no matter who the defendant is. So I don't think it's a especially strong argument to say someone could abuse this. We have courts that will review indictments. We have standards of burdens of proof of reasonable doubt. You have to do a trial. So we have other fail-safes that's not just a rogue prosecutor can go after a former president without any recourse. So I do think, Jack.
First of all, but they should, and that would be sick. I'm a fan of that in general. It would not be a rogue prosecutor. It would be someone who's, considering the extrajudicious killing of an American citizen to be illegal. I think there's a decent standard to apply. Yes, in the famous words of Noam Chomsky, you could prosecute every president. Here,
Said that if the Nuremberg principles were applied, every post-World War II president would be indictable.
It's probably true.
Can we run down them real fast? What did Eisenhower do that you would indict him for?
Eisenhower overthrew the conservative nationalist government of Iran with a military coup. He overthrew the first and last democratic government in Guatemala by military coup and invasion, leading to years of, in Iran it led to 25 years of brutal dictatorship. In Indonesia, this wasn't known until recently, but he conducted the major clandestine terror operation of the post-war period up until Cuba and Nicaragua in an effort to break up Indonesia, strip off the outer islands where most of the resources are, and undermine what was then considered as a threat of Indonesian democracy. Indonesia was too free and open. It was allowing a political party of the poor to participate, and they were gaining a lot of ground, so that Eisenhower supported and helped instigate a military rebellion in the outer islands. This is just for starters. These are all indictable offenses.
What about Kennedy?
Kennedy was one of the worst. Kennedy, first of all, invaded South Vietnam. During the Eisenhower administration, they had blocked a political settlement in 1954 and instituted a kind of a Latin American-style terror state.
He's like, don't get me started on that, dude. Indonesia has repeatedly been fucked over by imperialism, humanity, and Mother Nature. One thing that I found out on Twitter, it was a TikTok posted on Twitter, is that Indonesia also is ginormously long. As a matter of fact, most of the world is like at least 1 or maximum 2 Indonesia lengths away from Indonesia.
This is the crown jewel of Indonesia maps. This shows you, no matter where you are in the world, how many Indonesias you are away from Indonesia. And
there are very few places on the planet that are more than 3 Indonesias away from Indonesia. Like, look at how tiny that map is. Most places on the planet are only 1 to 2 Indonesias away from Indonesia. This is why Barack Obama is actually not Kenyan, but an Indonesian man. I rest my case. That's my new theory. A lot of Americans dropped the ball when they said Barack Obama is a Kenyan Muslim. Turns out Barack Hussein Obama was an Indonesian Muslim, specifically because he does kind of look like he could be related to the former presidents of Indonesia. I'm just saying, Indonesia, incredibly large. Indonesia, incredibly vast. Turns out Barack Obama more likely to be Indonesian than Kenyan.
The former president talking today about being in court. Let's listen in even before he starts as they do the setup here.
Sitting president has decided to prosecute his major opponent who's leading in all the polls in the country. The issues that the court had to deal with today were momentous. Whether or not a president of the United States could be prosecuted for carrying out his responsibilities.
I love the framing of, like, you know, doing an insurrection is the literal responsibility of the president. Your Honor, I'm sorry, he had to do it to him. he had to do it to him for the one time. You don't get it.
We can't have a country where every 4 years there's a cycle of political recrimination, where one administration attacks a prior administration when in fact that candidate is leading in the polls and will be the next president of the United States. As our legal team, as our appellate team made clear, that would be a disaster for our country. That would be a direct attack on democracy, and that cannot happen. What was very significant today, and I'm sure you all caught it, is the special counsel conceded that if it was President Obama who was being prosecuted for a drone strike, then they'd have to consider immunity. But when it's not, when it's President Trump, then they're taking the position that there's no immunity for President.
Yeah, first of all, this is such a funny take because Donald Trump also literally, I think, killed a direct relative of the person that Obama killed, the American citizen that Obama extrajudiciously killed. Donald Trump also facilitated in a raid which ended up killing that person's sister. So the idea that like, oh, this is a specifically Barack Obama thing is so silly. Why is it silly? Because clearly you're not up there for that reason. You killed an American citizen extrajudiciously as well, literally directly related to the person that Barack Obama had killed prior. Ain't nobody's making a big stink out of that, dog. You want to know why? Because that's America, baby. That's America enforcing its might around the globe. And that's precisely the reason why nobody cares about that. Nobody is going to prosecute for that. They should. In a just world, you should be prosecuted for that. The difference is they're prosecuting you for an insurrection. You didn't do that for the continuation of American hegemony. You did that for the continuation of your own power. And that you can't really do. That's it. Also, the other dude he had killed with the marshals, even that doesn't count. Even that is not considered to be inappropriate because that's like, you know, that's still the president sending the marshals, like utilizing the actual existing power structures against a criminal who has already given up their rights. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty. But if you're a socialist or if you're a leftist or whatever and you killed a fascist, then, you know, you're no longer innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until they kill you, and then you're extra guilty. You know, that's something to consider. That is not up for contention on this day.
And I think they feel this is the way they're going to try and win. And that's not the way it goes. That'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box, and it's a very sad thing that's happened with this whole situation. When they talk about threat to democracy, that's your real threat to democracy. And I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple. And if you don't, as an example,
it's so simple, dude. As president, they should let you do it. I don't understand. It's that simple. It's sick, man. That's awesome. Come on. You're opening up the Pandora's box. So what if Biden also maintains that same immunity and does an insurrection after losing the election? But this time, he just continues being the president. How would that work then? What if Biden currently, utilizing his presidential immunity, sent a hit squad to execute you? He's got immunity, right? You can't charge him for that. Let's think about this for a sec. Yeah, why doesn't Biden just send out an assassination squad right now to wherever Trump is and kill him? He can drone strike you. He's got presidential immunity. You can't do a crime when you're the president. I'm so confused. Biden isn't going after him. And also, he literally ran on Lock Her Up. Yes, he's saying Biden's DOJ is going after him. That's it.
But they conceded 2 points that I think were, by normal standards, if it weren't me, that would be the end of this case. But sometimes they look at me differently than they look upon others, and that's very bad for our country. You had a very big event yesterday, as you saw, in Georgia, where the district attorney is totally compromised. The case has to be dropped. They went after, I guess, 18 or 20 people. They wanted to go after a lot of other people. They wanted to go after senators. She was out of her mind. Now it turns out that that case is totally compromised. In fact, they say she's in far more criminal liability than any of them.
That's what they're saying.
You could say the horrible job he's done at the border where our country is being destroyed, or the horrible situation that took place. The lowest moment, I think, in the history of our country was Afghanistan, the way we withdrew. Not that we withdrew, but the way we withdrew. With shame, we surrendered. People killed, 13 great soldiers killed, many unbelievably, horrifically hurt, wounded, hurt. And hundreds of people died on both sides. Hundreds of people died. He could be prosecuted for that. So you can't have a president without immunity. You have to have, as a president, you have to be able to do your job.
I like the idea that like he had to do an insurrection as a part of his like presidential duty. This is very funny to me. You don't understand. Like I had to do January 6th because like it's just a part of my job. It's a part of like, it's similar to how Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, which was also my idea that he followed through on, but like I would have done better, but he did it worse.
A president has to have immunity. And the other thing is I did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong. The investigation of the election, which was a rigged election, everybody knows it. And just if you just look at, they didn't use state legislatures. They went to the FBI, and you look at FBI and Twitter, the Twitter files with the FBI, all of the horrible things.
That's my favorite thing is like the Twitter files and the FBI. People constantly talking about Twitter files, and it's like a suppression of the truth by Twitter or whatever. And like none of those guys are talking when Elon Musk just like bans people randomly for putting forward a tracker of his private jet, or banning people randomly because Bill Ackman decided that, like, his wife can't take it no more. Like, Elon Musk operating at the behest of billionaires and like and his billionaire buddies, and just like banning whoever willy-nilly. Like, where is the Twitter files on that? Where is the free speech on that? Doesn't exist. Doesn't matter.